Next, we're going to talk about lesson 4.2. I have the wrong one up here, sorry. So in lesson 4.2, we're talking about the properties of special triangles. In an isosceles triangle, we know that we have two congruent sides, which you can see marked on both the triangles on the screen with the dash marks. Those are the two congruent sides. Also, if it's isosceles, we know that the angles that are opposite to those congruent sides, those are called the base angles, are also congruent. And as you can see down below, we have that these two angles, 50 degrees, and each of them are congruent to each other. The converse, or meaning when you flip the wording around, is also true. If you have two congruent angles, then the sides opposite to those angles will be congruent, and therefore the triangle is isosceles. And when they're talking about opposite, what they're meaning is, if you look at the sides in the first one, and then you look at the angles that are across from them or opposite to them, those are the two congruent angles. And the converse is, if you look at the two angles and look at the sides that are opposite to them, those two sides are congruent. So on the left was the first statement about two congruent sides in an isosceles triangle means you have two congruent base angles. And the converse is on the right-hand side, meaning if you have two congruent base angles, then you have two congruent sides in an isosceles triangle. How do we use this? So I see that in my triangle, I have the two markings, which indicates it's a congruent triangle. And what I know about this is, since I have two congruent sides, the base angles, which I will call x, also have to be congruent. That leads me to the conclusion that my x plus my 70 degrees has to be a grand total of 180, which we talked about in the previous lesson. Following through with this, we know that we combine like terms for 2x, and we still have our 70. Sorry, let me just erase that actually. We have our 70, don't forget about that, equals 180. If I'm trying to solve, I subtract off 70 from both sides of the equation, and I end up with 2x is equal to 110 degrees. And then to find my answer, I'll divide both sides of my equation by 2, leaving me with each of my base angles being 55 degrees. So we use two concepts. The concept of the interior sum is 180, and the concept of an isosceles triangle has base angles congruent to solve for x. In the third slide here, we know that our one angle is 40 degrees. If I know that my left-hand angle is 40 degrees, that also means that my other angle must be 40. And I know that because I see the markings on my triangle, which indicates that this is an isosceles triangle. So really, I have a triangle, if I want to redraw it off to the right, that looks like 40 and 40, and then the unknown y would be what's left over in that triangle. So first of all, I know that my x was equal to 40 degrees because it was also a base angle in an isosceles triangle. If I try to find my y value, I now know that I have 180 degrees minus 40 is equal to the remaining y angle, which means that when I solve this, I will get y is equal to 100 degrees. Again, using the isosceles idea and the interior angles equals 180 idea.